Welcome to the Pigskin Party Podcast, the only podcast that combines real NFL analysis with a splash of pop culture and a dash of the random. Let's get this Pigskin Party started with your hosts, Brian McFadden, Will Southard, and Tommy Yu.
Welcome to the PPP presented by Legit Football. My name is Brian. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening or watching, and tell a friend because we're going to keep on growing this Pigskin Party. This is a real party this week. First of all, the gang's all here. You've listened to the past few episodes, the past few weeks whether I was on vacation, Will was on his way to a murderer hotel room, but no, we got the whole gang here. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Will Southard and Tommy Yu. Guys, how's it going? We're here.
What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Well, I got to see you in person for the first time in, 5 years, and it was glorious. How you feeling tonight, man?
It was glorious, except for you telling everybody that you picked a spot that was infested by like beachy murder flies, and we both got eaten up. And I had a horrible week after that. So if you ever go out to eat with Brian, don't let him pick where to go.
Don't let me pick the restaurant.
Tommy, that's for you. That's for you, Tommy.
You know, I was actually looking forward to doing like a little tour, getting to meet all y'all, but now definitely make sure Brian doesn't get to pick.
How many beachy murder flies live in Philadelphia, Tommy?
I mean, that's a trick question because all of us are beachy murder flies because we're all garbage, so it's kind of hard to answer that question.
Well, it was nice seeing you, Will, regardless of the outcome of both of our appendages from all those bug bites. I apologize for that, but it was nice seeing you. Great to have the gang back, and we've got an awesome show coming up. Let's go ahead and jump in. Let's bring in our guests. So we got two guests today. First, Fernando Ramirez, who is a Chargers beat reporter for Sports Illustrated and co-host of the Compas on the Beat podcast. Fernando, welcome to the PPP.
Appreciate it, guys, for having me. I know some of those killer bugs that you guys are talking about. I used to go down to Guadalajara and Puerto Vallarta and all these places when I was a kid, and I'd come back with mosquito bites all over me and everything. So I understand what you guys are talking about when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Will, can we at least say the food was good? I mean, I understand that we got eaten alive, but drinks were decent. I mean,
the food was pretty legit for a little crap hole by the beach, for sure.
Well, fine. Then you know what? It was nice.
It was called like the turtle soup. What was it?
Turtle
handler.
Turtle cafe. Turtle fin.
Turtle rabbit
shell.
cafe,
Turtle shell cafe. I think. Turtles and a half shell. Anyway, you know what? It was nice seeing you too. So Fernando, super excited to have you on the show. We do have another guest, and he is our repeat champion for the week, Ari Mayrov, who is the founder of My Sports Update, the NFL Update Twitter that most of you who listen to the show are probably familiar with, and the host of his own NFL show, My Sports Update NFL Podcast. Ari, welcome back to the PPP.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to be back. This is the second time that I've been on, and there are way more people here than originally. So we're really excited to be here to talk some football, and the season is getting closer and closer as the days goes by. So really exciting times.
That's how we give the illusion of getting our podcast more growing in popularity, Ari, is we just bring more people on it. So listeners are like, well, it's got to be way more popular by now.
We just overstuff it with guests and hosts, and we'll probably bring on like six producers.
We're going to have 46 co-hosts in like 6 months. It's going to be the most popular. We're going to outpace Barstool.
It's a real party.
Exactly. See, Ari gets it. So if this show goes well, we're just going to double and triple the hosts every single week. So super excited to have you guys on. For those listening, I'm sure that you've been able to deduce that since Fernando is a Chargers beat writer, we are going to be continuing our team deep dive series this week with a deep dive of the Los Angeles Chargers. But first, as always, let's start with some news. Our news is presented to you by Legit Football. So Legit Football, the top 5 NFL stories of the day delivered direct to your inbox every morning for free. Go to legitfootball.com and subscribe or find a link in the episode description. So we've got some Aaron Rodgers news because you know what? We can't go a week or two without something coming up that everybody in the NFL media needs to digest when it comes to Aaron Rodgers. And you know what? We're no different. We're an NFL podcast. We're going to cover it. So the NFL and NFLPA reached an agreement on how opt-outs are going to work for the 2021 season. The most noteworthy thing that came out of it is certain players, like Aaron Rodgers, can choose to opt out if they opt out by a certain date, in this case Friday, July 2nd. Then some of the roster bonuses and that they would otherwise forfeit if they just sat out are null and void, so they're not cost those penalties. To give you an example, so if Rodgers does decide to opt out by Friday, July 2nd, so if you're listening to this podcast, it's likely Wednesday or Thursday, so we're talking a day or two, it would actually end up potentially saving him over $20 million versus if he just decided to hold out a training camp and refuse to play, because you've got penalties for not showing up to camp, and you're going to forfeit a certain roster bonus for him just not showing up. But in this case, if he makes his decision in the next few days, he could actually save that, and that gives him extra leverage. So we'll start with our guests on this. Fernando, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, does this mean anything? Is this something he could actually utilize, or is this just more like we're just trying to fill the off-season content?
I might go with the latter just because, Aaron Rodgers is a competitor at the end of the day. I think that whatever happens between him and Green Bay, whether he's traded, whether he stays there, whatever, I still feel like he's a competitor. I don't think he could sit out a whole season and just kind of wait there and wait to play until next year. Maybe he could get his body right and kind of, how usually he'll go three seasons and then he kind of there's been an injury that's happened or something like that. But I just think he's way too much of a competitor, and I don't see Aaron Rodgers doing that. And he's made a lot of money, and if he gets a Jeopardy job, he'll have even more money. So, but as of right now, I just think he's too much of a competitor, and I don't see him wanting to sit out at all or doing anything like that. So, I don't think he would. I don't think he'd opt out.
All right. Do you think Jeopardy is a legitimate thing for him, or is that just another made-up thing? Do you think there's any possibility of him just straight out sitting out one way or another?
No, I don't think he's going to sit out, but I do think the Jeopardy thing is a legitimate thing. And the simple reality is that he could do Jeopardy and play football at the same time, because Jeopardy, they record basically all the episodes in a month or two span. So he could basically just do that, get it over with, and then come back and be there for training camp and be there for football and play the way he did last year without Jeopardy being a problem. So I don't really think one has to do with the other. If he gets the Jeopardy job, he could do it and he could still play football without any issue. My thing about this whole, opt-out situation here is that we're really in the off-season right now where there's nothing going on, and blogs and people who have to talk football for 3 hours a day and have no content to talk about are just throwing stuff at the wall, hoping for something to stick. The idea of Aaron Rodgers opting out, and simply if he does, his contract would toll to next year. He doesn't have to pay back any money, and then hopefully what he hopes is that the Packers would get so sick and tired of him that they would trade him then, and they'll get their draft picks and they'll be able to use it in April, right? That's what he would hope to happen. But I can't see Aaron Rodgers opting out, and if he does opt out, there's no opting back in. He can't just wake up on August 8th and say, hey, I want to play now. He can't do the Brett Favre or something. You're opting out, you're out. So I don't think this is a real thing. I'm still trying to figure out where this thing even started from. I haven't been able to figure that out, but I would be stunned if it does happen. I can't see the reigning MVP just opting out and saying, I'm not going to play at all. I think this thing ends up stretching into training camp. Hopefully they're able to figure something out, because I can't envision the Packers trading him, especially that they would know that whatever they're getting in return, if it's draft picks, they won't be able to use it until next offseason. So they're going to have to find a way to resolve this thing, but the idea of him opting out is just a bit crazy to me, and I can't see it happening.
Yeah, especially...
Remember,
go ahead.
Remember that time when I told Ari that I thought the Panthers were gonna draft Trey Lance? So this is a better opinion that Ari should be able to. I agree with Ari, actually, and I think another point is this: don't you think that if Aaron was really gonna do this, Goodell would make a call? Right? What a bad look for the NFL if Aaron Rodgers just decides to take the year off. I think the NFL would be very much against, not that they would be able to weigh 100%, but that there would be some phone calls happening if the word on the street was Aaron was just going to sit the year out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, for a lot of reasons, mostly the ones you mentioned, I don't think it's going to happen. But you also, I just don't think the NFL would be very.
That's for sure, and I also think it would be a bad look for Aaron. I think fans would not appreciate if he does do that. If he's actually battling it out with the team, I think fans understand that point of view. If he just completely opts out of the season and says, I'm not playing, I don't think fans would actually like that, and I think he would become the enemy and the villain in Green Bay. So I think he should just continue sticking to what he's doing right now, because for the most part, I think fans in Green Bay are on his side, because they know what they did to him last year in the draft, and most fans agree that that was kind of messed up. So I think he's going to continue to battle it out with them, with the front office, and we'll see where it goes from there. But the idea of opting out kind of sounds kind of crazy to me.
And I like that you brought that up, Ari, because Rodgers does care about his perception, at least within the fan base of Green Bay. I think that's the reason he sent out some of these people speaking on his behalf, is that he's trying to control the narrative to make the Green Bay front office, Murphy and Gutekunst, the enemies. So I think you're right. If he makes it, he wouldn't make a decision that he feels could end up turning the base against him.
He doesn't want to be what Brett Favre was, where he ended in Green Bay being the villain there, and basically everyone hated him until he retired. So what he wants there is the people to believe that it's the front office, it's Mark Murphy and Brian Gutekunst. They're the problem, not me. And if he does get out of there, it's their fault, it's not my fault. They're the reason this happened. That's what he's trying to do, and that's why we really haven't heard much from him. And if he does come back, I kind of have this feeling he's just going to show up as if nothing happened. You know, like that's the type of person that he is. But we'll see where this goes. I mean, we kind of get a good idea of what he's trying to do. He doesn't want to be there, but he doesn't really have a way of getting out of there. And he's trying to point it towards the front office, but they're not budging either. So they're kind of like just, you know, holding up right now for the past couple of months. I think they really didn't want this to become public the way it did, but it happened, and now we're all just waiting for something to happen. But the reality is, it's going to take a while. I mean, we could continue talking about it, but until something happens here, it might go well into training camp.
Ari, can I ask Ari a quick question?
What do you think? Sure.
Ari, do you feel like he would probably? Do you think, like, if he was to show up to training camp, do you feel like he might jump on the Pat McAfee show before and kind of maybe say, "Hey, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna do this," and kind of get it out before he has to jump in front of the media and everybody just berates him with questions? Or do you feel like he might just show up and just be like, "Whatever's about it," and just stand there and talk to the media for about 45 minutes, like they're gonna go after him?
No, I think Aaron figured out last year that the way to go is going on Pat's show. I mean, that's the way he's getting his message out. I mean, he loves that show. He loves going on there. They ask him questions that he kind of wants and enjoys, and he has a good time. I mean, you could tell when you're watching Aaron Rodgers' press conference that the guy wants to get out of there. Yeah. So if he just get his message out there on Pat's show and have some fun and laugh and all of that, I think that's the route he's going to go on, and that's the way he's going to do it. I think last year he enjoyed it so much that it's not going to end anytime soon. I mean, those guys all have a great relationship. Of course, he played with A.J. Hawk. So whatever, Aaron wants, I mean, he's probably feeding them all the information. They probably know a lot of stuff already, but they're keeping it quiet, which is the way you're supposed to do it when it comes to, holding on to news and your relationships with these type of people. So I think that's what's going on over there. And whatever he ends up doing, I think Pat's going to be first with it.
Hey, and Aaron, if you're listening and you want an additional outlet other than the Pat McAfee show, there's a great NFL podcast that we'd say.
Oh no, he definitely is.
Hey Ari, what do you think's more likely? Aaron sits out this year, or the Panthers?
Well, one of them already passed, but I'm kidding. But
in case nobody gets that,
I know.
And we roasted you for it, and you were wrong, and we didn't hold you to the fire enough on that. So I'm glad you're bringing it up yourself.
I mean, you're the one who's bringing it up, by the way.
Yeah,
it's not me.
exactly.
I mean, I could have done it, but I'm not.
He's a master.
But in reality, I don't see him sitting out. I just can't see Aaron, the competitor, sitting out. I think they're going to have to find a resolution, that's for sure. But I just can't picture Aaron not playing at all. Maybe he stretches it into week 1 and week 2. That's a possibility. And Jordan Love struggles. I mean, everything goes to his side, right? I mean, all the leverage goes to him. So maybe that could happen. But we have so much time until we get to that point. I've always said, let this thing play out. I mean, we're always hearing and talking about Aaron, when in reality, not much is going on right now. I mean, most teams right now are on summer break. Most players, front office, coaches, they're all on their summer thing. Not much is going on in the NFL. It's a dead period right now. Let's get to training camp and let's see where it goes from there, because that's really when it's going to start to heat up.
It's really just schmucks like us that are trying to fill this content gap.
Yeah, but what happens? Wait, hang on though. What happens, Tommy? What happens if what Ari just said is true, and Jordan Love balls out the first 2 weeks?
I mean, a lot of this has so many different routes it can go, right? You can see what Le'Veon Bell did, where he kind of held out. He was like, "Oh, what a new contract, blah blah." And then you see what happened with Melvin Gordon when he tried to hold out and kind of ruined his career. And then you see so there's a lot of different ways it can go, but I think the reason why this is so different is the fact that kind of like a lot of things that you mentioned, Will, that I didn't even think about with, could Goodell kind of be a part of this too? Would he have already reached out? What this actually reminds me of is, remember back, I know this is a completely different sport, in the NBA when Chris Paul wanted to be traded over to the Lakers to build that super team, the commissioner of the NBA was like, no, like, I am vetoing this trade. This is not allowed to happen. So he literally stepped in. So this kind of makes me put on tinfoil hat being like, is there something happening in the background? But the one thing that I wanted to say specifically on this situation, and the reason why I've been so quiet for the most part is, I feel for the Green Bay fans. Like, I'm so tired. I'm so tired of this already. I'm not even a Green Bay fan. I mean, the closest tie I have to this situation is I have a lot of Green Bay players on my dynasty football team, so I'm, like, waiting to see what happens. But, like, even in that, like, restraint, I'm just like, oh my god, why? Like, kind of like what Ari said. Sorry if I said your name wrong, but Rodgers hasn't actually said much of anything. But every passing day that goes by, degenerates like me, who's obsessed with football, is like, oh my god, Aaron Rodgers posted a picture at this time. Maybe he's sending us a message with a color-coded shirt that he's wearing with black. No, there's nothing really there. But all I want to say is, the longer this takes to resolve itself, the worse that the Green Bay Packers front office looks, in my opinion. I mean, it wasn't too long ago where even the Buccaneers front office had to troll them, being like, when we got Brady, even though he had no historical relevance to our franchise, of course, they did win a Super Bowl and stuff, but he's like, before we even drafted, what's-his-face, Trask, we asked Brady if that was cool. And, like, that's hilarious because obviously that's throwing shade to the Green Bay front office.
The Vikings asked permission from Kirk Cousins, or didn't ask permission, but they gave him a heads up that they might be drafting Kellen Mond.
This could also be a snowball effect. Like, if this really drags on and Rodgers, and you see everything that happens with Rodgers, well, Devontae Adams is a free agent next offseason. What if they franchise tag him and he says, no, I don't want to play for you guys. I saw what you guys did to a legend like Aaron Rodgers. Why the hell would I want to stay here? So it could be a snowball effect. This could really snowball effect and really turn ugly. I mean, for a team that's had two quarterbacks for the last 32 years, I think it's been 32 years. Now all of a sudden you're kind of in disarray and could be losing also your franchise receiver. I mean, it could turn ugly pretty quick in Green Bay.
And like what Fernando just mentioned, we already see that snowball effect kind of happening where half of the receiving corps didn't show up to the optional, training camp, whatever. And then, of course, when it came mandatory, everyone kind of showed up. But sorry, Will, I kind of dodged your question there saying, what if Jordan Love balls out? I think that's a really interesting conversation to have because it is in the realm of possibility. I mean, Green Bay has not a ton of great weapons, but I mean, the way that they've been developing quarterbacks, even though, it's not really fair. They got two Hall of Famers back to back, but that is a conversation we should definitely have. So in my way to kind of sidestep that question, a pro host move, I'm going to throw that over to Brian. What happens if, Jordan Love balls out for real?
I don't think you're going to – I mean, unless he's Patrick Mahomes balling out, I'm not seeing enough of an impact for them to – what does that mean to the Packers? Oh, yeah, Rodgers won the MVP last year. Oh, but Love played well these two games, so we're good. No,
he could get Dak Prescott it. I mean, he could
but
get
Tony
Dak
Romo,
Prescott it.
all praise be to Romo, especially on the broadcast side. Tony Romo and Aaron Rodgers are not on the same level.
Listen, our age has grown that I just compared Aaron
people
Rodgers
romanticize
to Tony Romo.
Romo so much, and as an Eagles fan, this is my chance to be like, come on now. Don't do that.
Well, he was good. He was I actually think he's underrated, but he's not Aaron Rodgers. He's not.
No, he wasn't underrated.
Super Bowl
He was
winner,
aight.
multiple
He was just
MVP,
okay.
Aaron Rodgers. So I don't think that's the same situation. There's no way to wrap this up with a bow. We're an NFL podcast. We need stuff to talk about. We're going to be talking about this right up until a decision happens, and then even after that, well, what happens in 2022? But the last thing I'll say is I've been saying since the beginning of this entire ordeal that actually agreeing with what a number of you have said is that the Packers are the ones that look like they have egg on their face the longer this plays out. Find something.
Hey, Brian. If Aaron Rodgers opts out next year, if Aaron Rodgers opts out next year, who do you think's going to have a better season, Aaron Rodgers or Jared Goff?
Poor Anthony. Poor Anthony. You know what? Out of respect for Anthony, I'm not going to answer that question. We can't talk about Aaron Rodgers the entire podcast, so there will be more. We'll cover him again. I think we've done enough today, but as I mentioned, I think Green Bay should get something done one way or another. All right, trade the guy, redo his contract, whatever it takes, short of maybe getting rid of your front office. That might be a bit extreme. Okay. The Pittsburgh Steelers made an offensive line change where they released longtime Pro Bowl guard David DeCastro and then immediately signed Pro Bowl guard Trey Turner, who most recently played for the Chargers. And I obviously want to start with Fernando on this. I'd love to get your thoughts on this as someone who saw Trey Turner, as somebody who covers the Chargers. I know Turner had some injury issues. DeCastro did as well. Is this just like an even swap? Well, what do you think of this move?
Well, a lot of us thought it was going to be an even swap last year when the Chargers traded left tackle Russell Okung for Trey Turner. And I mean, it just wasn't that. Trey Turner kind of came in overweight. He didn't look good during training camp, gets hurt. He didn't play the first game of the season. He was out. He played the second game of the season, and him and Brian Bulaga only played 8 snaps together that first 9 or 10 weeks of the season. He didn't play very well. He got hurt again with a groin issue, didn't come back until that Miami game. Then it took him a while to kind of get in shape, and it just wasn't a good marriage. That's why the Chargers released him. They didn't feel like he really brought anything to the team. That's, in my opinion, what it told you. I mean, if they really wanted to bring him back, they would have brought him back, but they decided that $8 or $9 million was way too much to spend on him. So they decided to let him go. It just wasn't good. He didn't play all that well. So it's going to be interesting to see if he really worked out this whole offseason, if he got back into shape, and if he's ready for that whole Pittsburgh. But from what I saw last year, it's not going to be the same as David DeCastro's an all-pro. He's a Pro Bowl player. Trey Turner has been in the past, but that's just not what we saw last year in Los Angeles, either during training camp nor during the season.
Ari, is this just a case of the Steelers' offensive line was dreadful last year, and it was one of the reasons that Ben Roethlisberger had to get the ball away in like 1.2 seconds, and the reason why their running game was just dead on arrival, and they really didn't do anything to improve it? Do you think this is just like shuffling decks on the Titanic? Is this just like, hey, we need to do something? Do you think this move makes any sense for Pittsburgh?
No, so there's for sure more to this. And again, we're in this dead portion of the offseason. So when the DeCastro news happened, it really happened out of nowhere. The first thing that I thought of was Julian Edelman. Because if you remember, when Edelman retired earlier this offseason, the Patriots first released him, and everyone thought that he would sign with Tampa Bay. And then a few hours later, he announced his retirement. So it was done like that for cap reasons. So I thought DeCastro was going to retire as well. So it's kind of funny. The first thing I did was to check his social media page to see if he's going to announce it. Lo and behold, I find out he doesn't have any social media pages. So we end up finding out a few hours later that he dealt with a nagging ankle injury last season, played through it sometimes, was out of games sometimes. He was not himself last year, and he still has not fully recovered, and he might actually still retire. We just don't know that yet. So for now, he can continue to recover, get all the necessary treatment, and eventually, if he wants to, he can play. He could take visits with teams, take a physical, and sign with a team. And he doesn't have to do it, before the season. He could do it in week 3, week 4. He's still only 31 years old, which is fairly young, so he can even take a full year off, like Kyle Long did last year, and then come back next year. So that's a DeCastro part. But as for Pittsburgh, I do feel there's more to this. And with DeCastro, there's clearly an injury there that is a problem for them. And they believe that he would be fully recovered for the minicamp, right, that we just had. And he wasn't. He didn't even participate. So there could be a scenario here where he got hurt away from the facility as well. So we're still trying to figure out exactly what's going on over there. And the idea of signing Trey Turner, as Fernando mentioned, last year he dealt with a bunch of nagging injuries. He did come in overweight. But this is a guy who was a 5-time Pro Bowler in Carolina, and they're expecting him to just plug him in and play guard there for Pittsburgh. I've always said one of the biggest problems for Pittsburgh's offensive line was when they lost Mike Munchak as their offensive line coach. And he went over to Denver, and Denver has become such a great offensive line with him there as the coach. So that offensive line needs a lot of help. They lost 4 of their starters from last year, and especially in a year like this where it's most likely Ben Roethlisberger's last year, Najee Harris's first year as the running back, I'm actually really curious to see how this all pans out, because it's a brand new offensive line on a team that really just completely collapsed last year. And I'm really curious to see what happens here. Trey Turner, it's a 1-year deal. So he's still a fairly young player. If he does well, he could cash in once again next year. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. But I do believe there's more to this Castro thing that happened, and we'll probably find out more details as the weeks go by.
Yeah, and I think, as I mentioned, that I don't think the Steelers have done enough, and you got by all means a stud running back in Najee Harris in the first round. this is Big Ben's last season. I think he should have retired last season, but I think you're setting yourself up for failure if you don't have a solid offensive line. TBD whether putting Trey Turner in instead of David DeCastro is an upgrade at all. But we don't need to spend any more time on it. It's the offensive line is important, but we can only talk so much about it. So there is something I do want to discuss as a little bit of a Dolphins homer. So this actually happened a couple weeks ago, but we haven't covered it. But something came out recently that kind of solidified that All-Pro Dolphins corner Xavier Howard is holding out for a new contract. We say holding out. Training camp itself hasn't started yet. He didn't show up to minicamp, so we'll see if it, come July, if he's still holding out. I'm assuming he is if he doesn't sign, based on recent reports. As a refresher, he signed a 5-year, $75 million deal back in 2019, but he isn't even the highest-paid cornerback on his team. That's Byron Jones, who they brought on prior to last year. And Howard led the NFL in interceptions with 10 in 2020, and when he was healthy a few seasons prior to that, also had a number of interceptions. So this isn't a fluke. He's shown to be a top corner. So I'll let my host start on this. Tommy, we'll start with you. Should the Dolphins just pay Howard and move forward, or is this cat and mouse game? Should it continue?
So they're in a kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place, right? Because one of the dominating headlines I remember heading into the season last year was how Miami was paying so much money to their secondary. And then everyone's like, well, it's going to pay off because Xavier Howard's great. Byron Jones, we'll see if that works out. He was one of the big free agent grabs over from Dallas and things like that. And Xavier Howard showed up. I mean, like you mentioned before, he led the league in touchdowns with 10 interceptions. And according to PFF from last year, he was the number 2 ranked corner, only behind Jair Alexander. And it was pretty darn close as well. So, yeah, he had a really, really great season. And I really don't blame him for holding out because I am always going to side with the player rather than like a whole organization. Sorry, Brian. But I absolutely understand where he's coming from because he absolutely balls out. Then he's seeing he's not even getting paid the most on his team. So that could be a little indictment of some contract issues from the GM, maybe kind of paying money and things like that. But in the long run, if I was Xavier Howard, I would just hold out just a little bit, only because what do you have to lose? You've shown, kind of like what you mentioned, this was not just lightning in a bottle. He has shown consistent great play, not just consistent great play. Actually, that's downplay. He's been getting better each season. I'm not saying he's going to continue to get even better and better and better to the point where he is the number 1 PFA graded player or even surpass double digits interceptions again. That's highly doubtful because, quarterbacks are eventually going to learn. Let's not throw it over that way. But it is really interesting because I know you are a Dolphins fan. If I'm viewing this from the outside, I think Xavier Howard just hold out a little bit, but for some reason, my gut tells me this isn't going to be a long-term play. But I'd love to know what Big Willie thinks over here.
Dude, Xavier Howard has been what a find for the Dolphins secondary. You know what I mean? And those cornerbacks that are that dominant are just really hard to come by. And I think in a year where, they're really, really, they have to rely on Tua. They just can't put him in positions where he has to just run, march up and down the field the whole season. So I don't know. Holding out is one thing, as we talked about earlier. It's kind of hit or miss on what kind of results you can get from doing that in your career. But if I'm the Dolphins, just pay them.
Yeah, one thing I want to add real quick is it's also interesting to think that obviously Brian Flores is the head coach of that team, and he comes from the Belichick coaching line, and Belichick has shown that he will pay cornerbacks. He went out, got Stephon Gilmore. He went out, got, if you just look at the history of who Bill Belichick actually pays for, whether it's free agency, second contract, whatever have you, which is ironic right now because I know we're kind of talking about, hey, is Stephon Gilmore going to get traded eventually? But he has shown that he is willing to pay big money for corners. So I wonder if that will trickle down to Brian Flores, or maybe he'll just, I'm not saying he's the guy in control of Miami, but maybe he'll just be like, we have Byron. We'll see what happens. So I just wanted to add that one point in there because that kind of adds an extra wrinkle, if you will.
Well, the wrinkle's important there. As a Dolphins fan, I'll throw in my 2 cents here, is that you're right. Flores has built that defense very similar to the Patriots in that it's back to front, that it's very strong in the secondary. They believe that if they have lockdown corners, the rest of the job up front becomes easier. And I think you should pay him. He was one of, if not the best cornerbacks throughout most of the season last year, 10 interceptions, and he's not even the highest paid on his own team. I'm a Dolphins fan. I say, Xavien, hold out. Get that money, and Flores and Greer, it'd be stupid not to pay him because he's earned it. This isn't somebody, you've already paid him one contract, and he's still outplayed that contract. It's not like you paid him and then all of a sudden his play declined. So that strength of that defense is built on the secondary. I'd like to see them up that contract, and hopefully Howard doesn't hold out for too long because he gets the contract he needs. Fernando, Ari, any thoughts on the Xavier Howard situation?
Yeah, I guess I'll start. I mean, it's really just a little bit more complicated because he is very early into that contract, and what teams don't want to do is when you really redo a deal with that many years left, it could create a domino effect where other players are going to start doing that as well, and the front office does not want that to happen. The thing with Howard that's so interesting is that he signed that 5-year, $75 million deal, but at the time, the cornerback market was topped by Josh Norman for like 3 straight years. It was never reset. Ever since he signed that deal, though, as you guys mentioned, his own teammate topped him, then Darius Slay did, and then Tre'Davious White did, and then Marlon Humphrey did, and then Jalen Ramsey just completely blew it up to $20 million a year. So since it is so early in the contract, they could do something similar to what the Patriots did with Stephon Gilmore, where you move future money up and give him more money in 2020, and then you come back and deal with the problem next year in 2021, especially knowing that the cap is going to explode very soon. So then it's become a little bit easier to redo that contract, especially when another year went away from that deal, and it's not as bad as redoing it with 4 years left, the way that Xavier Howard has right now. So these contract issues usually get settled during training camp or somewhere in that area, so we still have time. But Howard is kind of doing what Darrelle Revis was always doing when he was so good at it, which is overperform your contract and then come back and say, I want more money, even though he has multiple years left. And Revis excelled at that. He was like a master at that. And that's why he made so much money as one of the top shutdown corners in the NFL. So we'll see what the Dolphins do with Howard. But he knows he led the league in interceptions. He knows he led the league in pass breakups. And he's a valuable part to Brian Flores' defense. So he might be able to pull this off. I would be surprised if they actually extend him and give him more money. I could see them doing what the Patriots did with Stephon Gilmore and just move some money up and then come back to it next year.
Yeah, I agree with Ari. I mean, that's just the way. You don't want to keep on doing that, especially because some other players could come out and be like, hey, look, I just signed an extension, but look, I can do this, or look at the way I just balled out. So, and organizations don't like doing that. So I agree with Ari. I think they're going to probably grab future money and do something with that, and maybe look at the contract after this season, after this next season. With Darrelle Revis, I mean, he had Rex Ryan. Rex Ryan knew how valuable he was to his defense and everything that he did. So I'm pretty sure Brian Flores will go to bat for him the same way, but I just think they're going to grab future money and give him that just because of that whole deal. And next year look at giving him a contract extension, especially if he has another great season and if the defense has another great season. Especially because they will have, like Ari said, they're going to have more money, and especially because you have a rookie quarterback on a rookie a second-year quarterback on a rookie deal. So always when you have a rookie deal with a quarterback, that usually helps you out and helps you save money. So I'm with Ari. I feel like they're going to look and give him future money and not give him an extension yet until after this season and kind of look at it. But I don't see Xavien either as a guy that'll hold out very long. I'm sure he'll do it for a little bit, but I think he's gonna know what the deal is. He's gonna see that, hey, this team has a potential of being very good this year, especially in the AFC. So I'm sure he's gonna want to get to work and really and get back to it and try and make a playoff run this year.
Yeah, and let me just add one more thing if I can. If you guys remember, since you guys are Dolphins people, last year in October, late October, there's a report that was out that the Dolphins were actually talking trade about Xavier Howard. I don't know if you guys remember that.
I do.
They
yeah.
quickly put out a statement and said it wasn't true. It turned out to be that was true. They actually were taking calls on him. So I would just watch out for that as well if something actually occurs there, because they have discussed this in the past. And his name has been brought up in trades. I don't know if it's going to happen, but those talks have happened over there in the front office. So I'll just keep an eye on that.
I can tell you the Chargers won't be one of those teams that try and trade for him.
There you go.
There's not a lot of movement that happens over here.
30 teams left. But I have seen those reports, Ari, and I've been sticking my head in the sand and going la, 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 and hoping that is just speculation, because I have been a big Xavier Howard fan ever since they drafted him in the second round, and he has been phenomenal. And as I mentioned, that defense really relies on the strength of that secondary. So hopefully this is the last time we have to report on a Xavier Howard holdout from a Dolphins fan perspective. So before we move on to our Chargers deep dive, I do want to ask Will a question. So there was a topic that he brought up last week before we determined that he couldn't come on, and that was the promo that came out for the shop where Tom Brady was shown saying, "Oh, you're going to keep that MFer?" We were going to speculate, and we did last week, on who that was. And then it's actually come out recently that apparently reports are saying that it was Derek Carr, who I don't believe was one of the people that we were speculating. So, Will, do you think Brady, your beloved Brady, was talking about Derek Carr and the Las Vegas Raiders, or do you think it was?
I think it was the
someone
Bears.
Else?
If I had to take a guess at who that was, I would probably say it's the Bears. Because he further came out and said, "There's no effing way I would have went to that team anyway." And think about that, right? Like, I mean, I guess the Raiders could fit that profile, but it would it was either Philly or the Bears, I think. I mean, it wasn't the 49ers were the initial one, but like, why would you say that about the 49ers, right? As far as I know, he actually did want to go to the 49ers. So, those would be my two guesses. I know Ari probably has an opinion, but that's what I would say he was at.
I'm actually fascinated about all of this because this has given people a lot of things to talk about right now. So, no, I don't think
we
it
need
was
the content in June.
I don't think it's the Bears. I don't think it was the Raiders. I don't think it was the 49ers. I'm shocked people are not saying it was the Titans. I mean, if you just follow the reports last year, the Titans had Ryan Tannehill as a free agent. Mike Vrabel and John Robinson came from New England, and they were in on Tom Brady. And in the last minute, they got a deal done with Ryan Tannehill. And the report literally said that they're opting for Ryan Tannehill over Tom Brady. Like, that was the report that was out there. They're opting for Tannehill over Tom Brady at the last minute. 2 days later, Tom Brady signs with Tampa Bay. If you just follow the reporting, that's what makes the most sense. I don't know why people are not talking about it.
I think we brought it up as one of the possibilities.
Tom Brady
but
would,
it just didn't seem to have a lot of credence. But all right, nobody covers reporters
Tom Brady
closer
would
than you,
MF
so I
Ryan
trust him on that.
Tannehill? Like, you...
They were in the same division, and the Dolphins were not great during that period. So
fair
Tom
enough.
Brady got to see him a lot.
Yeah,
and
but
the Titans and the Titans knocked him out of the playoffs.
And the Dolphins had a way of beating New England at least once a year. The Miami Miracle, Tannehill was the quarterback for that. So, now it's starting to make even more sense.
Yeah, no, and like I said, the Patriots got knocked out. Tom Brady's last playoff game was against Tannehill and the Titans, so he got to see firsthand how Tannehill worked with the Titans and everything. So, wow, Ari, I put all the pieces now together, and I'm like, oh wow, yeah, that all really did go down that way. And
but hang on, wait.
I mean,
before
that's
we
just
crown
that
that
was
the right answer, why would he say there's no effing way I would have went to that team anyway? I mean, that was a good landing spot, right, for all intents and purposes. So,
I mean, because I just don't think that Giselle and Ryan Tannehill want to go to Tennessee. I mean, I think it's probably that simple. But
and then their defense.
I don't think he's taking Giselle over there. Like, they have so much money, he doesn't have to move to Nashville or Tennessee or anything like that.
Yeah,
at all.
but
He's
that's
married
his
to a
wife.
supermodel.
Why would
leave
you
his
want
wife
to take
anywhere?
Giselle to any state that requires her to wear a coat? Like, you want to take a state, it's like, oh, bikini weather all year long. That's where you would want to take Giselle.
I look back at all the reporting, and the way that was reported specifically just, it was literally, it pointed to Tennessee. I mean, if you just look back at it, Diana Rossini was on top of it the entire time because she's very well connected to Tennessee. I mean, the way she reported on it, it basically said that they were in on Tom Brady till the end, and then they struck a deal with Ryan Tannehill. They probably used him as leverage, and that was basically what happened. So I kind of think it was Tennessee. We'll probably never know. Tom is probably enjoying this as much as possible, but like, I look at it and I just feel like it was them. And, look at Tennessee. There are New England connections all over there. So it kind of made sense they would go after him. And the last second, they pulled out. So, I mean, that's what I think it was.
Guarantee you Tom Brady never pulls out.
Well, this is the reason we have Ari Meirov on here.
Of deals, Fernando.
I mean, if you were married to Giselle, I mean, okay, we won't go down that route.
But I mean, if you're looking at it though, Tennessee didn't have the defense that he was looking for. I mean, Tampa Bay's defense was just. I mean, the front seven is just killer. I mean, I know the Chargers went after him and they were trying to go after him. I don't know how well that would have worked out, but to me, I mean, now looking at it after they won the Super Bowl, Tampa Bay seemed like the clear-cut favorite, but yeah, no, I mean, I wouldn't see you have Derrick Henry, you have AJ Brown, you have Corey Davis, but it just didn't seem Tennessee doesn't look like a fit really, except for him being with his former linebacker.
Tampa Bay right now looks like those teams that you would trade for on Madden if you were just making like your ridiculously like all-star offense. You know what I mean? Minus Leonard Fournette, I would not trade for Leonard Fournette, but the rest of it, oh yeah, 100%.
And let me guess, you would put
for sure.
Bernard
I would put him
RB1.
at quarterback. Put Tom Brady as RB1.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm going to side with Fernando on this. Is that I'm convinced, and my guess was San Francisco. He's from the Bay Area. There's the Jimmy G connection. He absolutely would call a mother effer. That was my guess, but Ari, this is why we have him on, because he's got the connections and the way he laid it out. Yeah, I'm pretty convinced that it is Tennessee. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. We are going to our Team Deep Dive series. As we mentioned earlier, we will be diving deep into the Los Angeles Chargers. Excited to have Fernando on to do this. Anthony, you picked an awesome sound drop for the Chargers. I'm loving it. So I want to start with your. The first question is what we ask everybody who comes on for the deep dives. Is first of all, what was your thoughts on the 2020 season, kind of at a high level?
Well, I mean, high level, just Justin Herbert and the way he performed last year. I thought that was. I mean, we hadn't seen it. I mean, we had seen it before, but like nothing to this extent. I mean, you knew what you were getting with Andrew Luck. I think with Herbert, there was a lot of questions coming out. There was, it's Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, and then there's a little bit of a space. Then it's Justin Herbert. A lot of people saw him as a bust, and I mean, I'm not saying that he's now a complete superstar and everything, because you still need to see a little bit more. But after the last season, wow, it was just. Incredible the way he performed. He comes in against Kansas City, and I remember I looked at a fellow beat writer, and I'm like, this has to be a wildcat play. Like, there must be doing something. And then I started looking around for Tyrod Taylor, and he was nowhere to be found. So it was incredible the way he performed. He did have his struggles at times. Struggled against Buffalo. He struggled against Miami, and he struggled against New England. So, I mean, he did have his fair share of growing pains. But the Chargers defense really did... I felt like the defense needed a little bit of a pick-me-up. Last year, Joey Bosa had almost every injury. At one point against the Saints in Week 5, he had a shoulder, knee, ankle, and I can't remember what else, like a hip injury. He was listed for all those. He still played. He had a sack on Drew Brees. Yeah, exactly. So the defense needed a little bit of juice. That's why I feel like they got Brandon Staley. I feel like the organization didn't feel like defensive coordinator Gus Bradley was using them to their full extent, and you've heard it. Kenneth Murray came out and said that he feels like the system last year was not good for his skill set, so he's going to be playing different. Last year was more drop back, more doing some other things. He said a couple of weeks ago that he's excited about getting to rush the passer. Drew Tranquil said at one point 2 years ago they had him covering Tyreek Hill, and he's like, why am I covering Tyreek Hill? Like I have to be confident about my skill set.
Wave to him as he goes by.
Exactly. He's like, I shouldn't be covering him. And you know what? I remember that play. That play was actually incomplete because I think Patrick Mahomes underthrew it a little bit. But lucky for him. Yeah. So definitely Chargers had some positives. They had a lot of negatives too with not being able to hold on to leads. They lost to Tampa Bay, New Orleans. A lot of Tampa Bay, New Orleans. Some of these teams they had big leads on them, couldn't hold them. So I'm sure the Chargers organization is hoping that Brandon Staley is able to change a lot of these things around. And I mean, word is from the players, from other people within the organization, is that they're very excited about what Brandon Staley's bringing. And Joey Bosa said before minicamp was over, I'm excited to be a Charger. I believe in our future. So it's looking pretty positive now. But going back to 2020, I mean, it was just everything that could go wrong went wrong for them. They at least ended on a 4-game win streak, and that kind of helped Justin Herbert because they were winning close games and they were coming from behind and winning some of these games. So that definitely helped Justin out with his mentality and everything going into the offseason.
First thing, I think we should introduce a quick segment on this show where we have like a moment of silence for Tyrod Taylor every time he gets mentioned because, man, we have lamented that poor guy. Something crazy is going to happen in Houston, and he's going to get replaced by Davis, and it's this guy's just had one run of bad luck after the other.
What if he actually plays the whole season?
I don't think any of us will know what to do. Oh, wow. Good. Maybe Tyrod Taylor was meant to be in Houston in that train wreck of an organization. But secondly, I wanted to mention, you mentioned Justin Herbert. Obviously, he had some growing pains and did have a few areas he needed to improve. And I wanted to ask you specifically about that because a lot of times in the media, they're just praising Herbert. Herbert's amazing. He had a historical season, which he did. But I really want to know, as someone who covers the Chargers closely, where are the areas that he didn't do as well as he could have? Where are the areas that he can still improve in 2021?
Well, I mean, this is an area, but it really wasn't on him. He couldn't stand in the pocket at all. Like when he would hike the ball, he had to do about an 8-step drop back because he had no room to maneuver. So I feel like he was a little timid when it came to that kind of stuff. So like he would drop. I remember I think it was the game against Miami. He drops back and Trey Turner, as soon as he drops back, Trey Turner already has his defender right in his face, right on top of Justin. And Justin's like trying to get the ball off, and the guy hits. I think he hit the defender right in the hand and knocks the ball out. So it was just one of those things where Justin couldn't sit in the pocket. So I'm sure that's what Joe Lombardi and the new offensive coordinator for the Chargers are going to work on him with. Another thing was he did get confused against Buffalo, against Miami, and the Patriots when it came to that zero cover blitz. They would disguise it, and Justin at times didn't know. He thought, it's going to be a zero. It's going to be they're going to blitz. So he would not change the play, but make adjustments. But then they would disguise it and actually drop back and go into cover 3 or do something different like that. So Justin really wasn't adjusting. Keenan Allen said after those games, I felt like we were confused. He said but I don't know if he meant you didn't know if he meant Justin or offensive coordinator Shane Steichen or just everybody as a whole. The whole offense
He's a very arrogant person.
Yeah, no, of course, no. And Keenan knows how to take advantage of different. Yeah, there you go. So definitely, I mean, those are some of the areas that he needs to improve in. Also, and this was early, but there was a play against Kansas City where Justin had rolled out to the left, and he had he looked down the field and he tried to make a pass to Mike Williams, and it was intercepted. And instead, he could have ran and had 15, 20 yards, and he could have had the first down. So those kinds of things are some of the things that Justin needs to work on. But it seems like Brandon Staley's already gotten to work with him. They've already broken down those games, the Patriots game, the Dolphins game, and some of these other things to really help him with that. And then on top of that, they already helped bolster the offensive line with the drafting of Rashawn Slater. Matt Filer's come in as a free agent. Ode Abuji has come in. And then obviously they gave Corey Linsley all that money to be their center. So the Chargers have really revamped this offensive line. And I'm sure Justin, first of all, is thanking the organization for using their money to go out and get him an offensive line. But also he's going to take advantage of that. And I'm sure he's going to be excited about this upcoming season with a new offensive line and a new offensive playbook.
Here's a question that I have brought up a few times on this show. I like the hire of Brandon Staley, but as a defensive-minded coach, do you think that affects Justin Herbert's development at all? And how do you feel about the Staley hire in general?
Well, I'll go with that first. The Staley hire in general, it was just they needed a breath of fresh air, and it feels like Staley's doing that. With all the quote-unquote holdouts that they were doing where players didn't want to go to minicamp and they didn't want to do all that stuff. Well, Staley sat down and really asked the players, what can we do so we can work, but at the same time, you guys don't run the risk of injury? So Staley basically took away the helmets. They were just in shorts and t-shirt and jerseys, and they worked harder and longer. But he's like, if you guys need to work with me. So that was one of the things coming in where people talked about it. Jalen Ramsey, I mean, you guys know, Jalen's not one of those people that really give flowers to anybody unless they truly deserve it. And with Brandon Staley, he said he is one of the best. He's the best defensive coach I've ever been around. So that means that he trusted Brandon and that he believed in Brandon's message. So now around the team, I feel like that could really help Justin Herbert in the long run because, one, he played quarterback in college. He grew up playing quarterback. He knows how to play offense. Now he just turned to defense. So I feel like what he's really going to do is, like I said, he's gonna sit with Justin and say, hey, this is some of the stuff that they're gonna throw at you this year. This is what the Raiders are gonna do on defense. This is what New England's gonna do. This is what Pittsburgh's gonna do. And I think he's really gonna sit and help him redefine the way he plays quarterback and really help him see what he's gonna see out on the field. And I think it's going to help him out just because of that simple fact that Brandon Staley's smart. He knows exactly what other defenses are going to be playing or what defenses are going to be throwing out. And Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, that's what they said that they would do during the offseason. They would sit down, they would break down everything. And that really helped Tom kind of see the way opposing defenses would play him during the season. So I'm sure that can only help Justin and Justin's development. But they're going to lean on, obviously, on Brandon, but they're going to lean on also on Joe Lombardi and then Shane Day, quarterback's coach. He was with San Francisco. Now he's with the Chargers. So they all seem to have a plan for Justin, and it really revolves on what can we do to help him be able to exploit his talent and being able to help him ball out, basically. So that's basically what the Chargers are going to do. And I feel like Brandon Staley really is going to help Justin's development and help him see kind of what some of those clean up those mistakes that he had last year.
It certainly can't hurt.
Hold on, not just helping Herbie, but matching Staley up with Derwin James, who should be returning. Oh my, come on! That defense is already filthy.
I agree.
I watched this YouTube clip that the Chargers marketing team already put out where they mic'd up Derwin James, and he just looks like one solid muscle running around. I'm like, oh my goodness, don't sleep on this team. Not that anyone is. I feel like a lot of people are picking the Chargers as their dark horse team for good reason, but no, I actually love the hire, like you said, Fernando, too, for many of the reasons that you said, but also the return of Derwin James. I mean, when he went out, it wasn't just a solid player leaving. I felt like he was one of the great defensive vocal leaders on that team. Just to have him return alone is a huge bolster to that defense, but now with Staley, oh man, I bet Fernando had smiles.
And you know what's crazy, though, is that you guys didn't get to see what I saw last year. When we were out on the field during training camp, seeing Keenan Allen go up against Derwin James, where there were some epic battles that they really did go one-on-one and everything. But the thing with Derwin is that he's going to have to stay healthy, and the Chargers need him to stay healthy. They're going to need him to be at 100% this season because they really missed him last year. And I mean, last year, Rayshon Jenkins moved over to strong safety. He did the best that he could, but it just wasn't the same, especially with a guy like Derwin that you can move around the field. You can place him in different places or place him on different positions on the field. And that's what Chris Harris Jr. told us about this Brandon Staley defense the other day. He's like, Derwin and I are going to be positionless players. We're going to be all over the field. And I'm like, I knew Derwin was, but Chris Harris Jr. too. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to be playing at different spots. I'm going to be doing a lot of different things that I really haven't done in my career, but I'm excited to do it. So it's going to be, it seems like the players are very excited about this Brandon Staley, not just his defense, but it seems like everybody's excited as a whole for what they're going to do on offense, on defense, special teams. And everybody really likes the coaches. Brandon brought in Ronaldo Hill as a defensive coordinator, former player and the Broncos defensive or secondaries coach. And he's been around Justin Simmons. He's been around Bryce Callahan. He's been around some of these good players and helped them develop.
The Dolphins secondary. Xavier Howard and
exactly. So it's really going to help. It's really going to help these guys a lot to have kind of guys like this. Darius Swinton was from Arizona. Man, that guy, you guys got to watch out for him. I think he's going to be a head coach pretty soon. Darius Swinton, when we have him on, when we talk to him, he is he's so energetic. He breaks down all these special teams plays. And then he told us when he first got hired, oh yeah, when the Chargers were telling me that they wanted to interview me, I watched every single special teams play that they had last year. First of all, I felt bad for him because the Chargers had the worst special teams group in the NFL. So I was like, dang, I feel bad for you, man. Like, I had to be there and I had to live it. And I was kind of like, damn, really again? Like, you guys are really going to go through this again? So I can only imagine how he felt as a defensive coordinator. And then Joe Lombardi as well. Feels like everybody's excited about the mixture of coaches that Brandon Staley's brought in.
I mean, it can't hurt that Lombardi worked with Drew Brees in New Orleans for so long. I mean, that's the amount
and the knock on him, and the knock on him is what happened with Detroit. But the same thing is too. I mean, everybody keeps on going back to that, but hey, he had to have grown up in a sense. Like, that was back in 2013-14. I know it was a disaster, and they couldn't do anything, and the offense just looked the offense looked pedestrian at best. But now you have a lot of different weapons here. You have a lot of he had to have grown up a little bit. or grown out of that. And then on top of that, he was with Drew Brees the last 6 years. So when we talked to Drew Brees 2 weeks ago, when he came to minicamp to do some stuff for NBC, he said that he's excited about this Joe Lombardi defense and that he feels like Justin will be right at home with what they're going to do. And then he pointed out Mike Williams is a guy that he feels like could break out, especially if he's in that Michael Thomas role for this offense.
So you're saying anybody who goes to coach in Detroit, their soul just gets sucked right out, right?
Is that a picture?
Well, that's why he had to. I mean, that's why he had to go to. That's
Sorry,
why he had to
Anthony.
go to back to New Orleans to kind of get it back and get his mojo back. And now he's in L.A.
He need to find his love for the game again after Detroit, like the Dementors from Harry Potter sucked his
right.
soul out. He's like, oh my god.
Oh, we're
Is that
doing
a
movie
picture of
references.
you
I
and
like.
Drew
I
Brees
love
behind
that.
you? Is that
What's
a
up?
picture of you and Drew Brees behind you?
No,
Over your-
that's John Cena.
Oh,
Oh,
it's kind of like Drew Brees, sort of.
John
The
Cena, Drew
ultimate
Brees.
flex.
Same
No, that's
thing.
actually John Cena. You can't see him, but I did. Man, these references are coming with today. Brian, I hope you get all this and kind of spread it out in different clips to make it seem like I know what I'm talking about.
Just for you, Tommy. We're just here to make you look good. All right, let's keep going with the Chargers deep dive. Fernando, you mentioned briefly about their draft class, but I wanted your thoughts kind of on the class as a whole. What are your thoughts?
I thought it was Tom Telesco's best draft as a general manager of the Chargers. There have been some in the past, and I mean, this is just on paper, but his last few drafts, I mean, besides last year with just getting Kenneth Murray and getting Justin Herbert, besides that, the rest of the draft was kind of eh. Then 2019, I mean, there's a lot of questions there. Jerry Tillery hasn't been what they thought he was going to be. I wasn't very high on him when he came out in the draft. I thought he was a okay player. I didn't think he was a first rounder, but so Drew Tranquil was probably the best player that they got out of that draft. And then if you really look at it, since he's become the general manager, there's nobody left on this team from the 2014 draft. There's nobody left from the 2015, 2016. Only Joey Bosa's left. So there is a lot of question marks when it comes to him and Tom Telesco and the way he drafts. A lot of the players that he's drafted, I think I did the math on this. Out of the 70 odd players he's drafted, 25 of them are out of the NFL. So it hasn't been pretty. And some of these guys he's drafted high. Craig Mager in 2015 was a cornerback from like Texas Southern or Texas something, and I can't remember which one it was. And he was out of the NFL.
Texas
There's some
State Armadillos.
There you go, Texas State.
more references.
He drafted Manti Te'o. He drafted some of these other players, and they just haven't developed. But I feel like this could be the first draft where Tom Telesco really did well with most of these picks, and they're going to be guys that are going to contribute this season. And the crazy part is he didn't even have to jump up for Rashawn Slater or Asante Samuel Jr. I mean, both of them really fell into his lap, and I was amazed because I thought as soon as Penei Sewell was drafted, I thought, Carolina's going to take him or somebody else was going to take him, and no, he was able to wait until the Chargers selected 13th, and then Asante Samuel Jr., same thing. And he even said after the draft, he's like, or when we spoke to him, he's like, there is no way there's 8 corners that are better than me. He's like, people are just judging me because of my size. He's like, but I'm going to show them. I'm going to show them that I'm going to be an all-pro cornerback, and if he plays anything like his father did, I mean, he will be pretty good. So yeah, no, this is Tom Telesco's, in my opinion, his best draft as the general manager of the Chargers.
Well, we've done a lot of praising the Chargers. Understandably, I think that the arrow is pointing way up, but is there anything you think they missed on during the offseason? Any holes or weaknesses that they didn't address properly?
The defensive line. I mean, it's been they had Justin Jones has been okay. There's been times where he's kind of iffy, and then like I said, Jerry Tillery. But then you look at it, Linval Joseph is their best offensive lineman. He's a veteran. He's 32 years old. They need some more power on that defensive line. I think the other edge rusher, I mean, there's question marks. Melvin Ingram's now gone. He's still a free agent. Who's going to be opposite Joey Bosa? And can they have the same production? Match Joey? I mean, nobody's going to match Joey Bosa with his production. I mean, the guy's just an animal. But on the other side, who's going to be able to match that and kind of be that tag team duo with Joey? I mean, I remember one time I told Joey and Melvin that they reminded me of the Dudley brothers from WWE. Like they would destroy guys, get right through the offensive lineman, they'd meet at the quarterback, and it was just they got a kick out of that one. But but they're going to need to find something on the opposite side. Is it going to be Uchenna Nwosu? Uchenna had that very good play a couple of years ago against Lamar Jackson in that playoff, in the playoffs, where he knocks the ball out of his hand at the end of the game and Melvin Ingram recovers, but he hasn't done much since then. They drafted Chris Rumpf in, I think, the 4th round from Duke. He's very athletic. He's long. He reminds me a lot of Leonard Floyd. But can he produce his rookie year? Because they said he needs to gain a little bit of weight and get a little bit leaner. So that's going to be interesting as well. But they're going to need somebody on the opposite side of Joey. And then the defensive line, they face a lot of really good running backs this season, especially at the beginning of the season. I'm sure opposing teams will be running the football to see if the Chargers defensive line is going to be able to hold them or not. But I would definitely say the defensive line is one of those places where they do have a couple of holes, and they didn't fix that. They didn't address that.
All right, so one more question to close it out, and we ask this of everybody who comes on for these team deep dives, and I want to bring Ari in on this too, but we'll start with you, Fernando, as the Chargers beat reporter. What are your predictions for 2021? Plant your flag. What are your record, do you think? Do you think that this is a playoff season? Well, we will hold you to it very, very closely, so tread lightly.
Shoot. I think I had them at 10-7. Yeah, I had them at 10-7 and making a wild card spot. I think that, especially Tom Telesco, he's gonna need to prove or have a roster where they do make the playoffs. I mean, he's the only general manager in the NFL right now that has been, if he's had a tenure of 5 years or longer, that hasn't made an AFC championship round. He hasn't. So Tom Telesco has not won the division since he's been with the Chargers. He hasn't made it to an AFC championship game yet. And there's been rosters that he's thrown out there that are kind of iffy, and he makes weird selections. So I honestly thought he was going to get, when Anthony Lynn was fired, I thought Tom Telesco was going to go as well. But I guess the Charge organization believed in his vision for the future. They felt like he's done enough. And I mean, I guess Justin Herbert might be one of the reasons why he kind of saved his job.
Might be the only reason.
Yeah, it might be the only reason, but I think Tom Telesco needs to have a team that makes the playoffs, especially because if they make the playoffs again and it's the same old stuff from last year, there's no one else to look at now. There's no Anthony, like they're not going to fire Brandon Staley after giving him a fresh 4-year contract. So it's going to fall on Telesco, but I have them at 10-7, and I think Justin will get better. I don't know if he's going to have, like I've told people, yes, I think if you told me, oh, he's going to have a second year like Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, yeah, I'd believe you. If you told me he's going to have another season like he did last year, I'd be like, yeah, I believe you. I don't think he'll regress. I think he's either going to stay par with the way he played last year, or he's going to get better. I don't see him regressing. I just think he's too talented. He's too smart of a human being. And I mean, yes, this is his 6th offensive coordinator in 6 years. This is his 5th head coach in 6 years. But I think Justin's been there, done that. He's the perfect guy to be able to handle that kind of stuff. And I feel like he'll get his first taste of playoff football. And it'll be interesting to see kind of how far he's able to take the team, especially with his ability.
And Ari, what about you? What are your thoughts on this Chargers team going into the 2021 season?
Yeah, I actually did a podcast with Jordan Schultz after the draft, and we both asked the question, who's the team that we're most excited for going to 2021? And we both agreed it is the Chargers. I mean, this is a team that they were kind of a joy to watch last season when Justin Herbert came in. He gets thrown in and becomes a star immediately. And you're going to tell me that this team is going to have Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, and his offensive line that added an all-pro center in Corey Linsley, Rashawn Slater, and who some people actually thought was higher than Penei Sewell, and then an underrated signing with Matt Filer at guard. I mean, ultimately, like it's always been with the Chargers, it's going to come down to health. I mean, year in and year out, there is an excitement level for this team, and then they're just derailed by injuries. I mean, it feels like it happens every year before the season even starts. And I know that Brandon Staley is prioritizing conditioning with this team, which is something very important to him considering the amount of injuries that this team has had. And, speaking of Justin Herbert, we all enjoyed watching him last year, and he's going to continue to develop and become a star in this league. I'm actually curious to see him in this new scheme. In his rookie year, he had Shane Steichen, and those two, they kind of bonded well, and there was some talk that maybe Brandon Staley is going to keep him on the staff as the offensive coordinator to have some continuity there, but they opted to hire Lombardi, as Fernando said. And Herbert is a genius. I mean, he probably already has the offense down in his memory, right? Like the guy is a in college, I mean, what was he, a biology major or something like that? So like the guy, I mean, he's really smart. So he probably already has all of this down. But, you obviously don't want your quarterback to continue switching schemes and having new voices in his ear. So I want to see how this works. But I saw Keenan Allen mention the other day that this offense is not so strict because it lets him play more freely. And really what that means is that he's going to have options in his routes. And for a route runner like Keenan Allen, who is so smooth and one of the best in the league, that's kind of scary to think about, especially with Justin Herbert throwing the ball. So the possibilities are endless there. So for me, I wish they weren't in the AFC West with the Chiefs there, but I think this is a team that is going to compete this year. It's a team that I want to watch very closely. And off the bat in week 1, they get to play Washington against Chase Young and that defensive line against this brand new offensive line. So I'm curious to see that as well and see how they hold up. So I think it's a team that's going to be competing. There's 7 playoff spots once again. It's 17 games this year. I'm curious to see how this all pans out, but I think the Chargers are going to be in it till the very end. As long as they are healthy, Derwin James is coming back, as he mentioned. Drew Tranquil is coming back. Joey Bosa is a beast. This is a team that should be able to compete this year.
And then another storyline you put out there.
Spoiler alert.
Rashawn Slater said that he feels like he got put on the map going up against Chase Young back when Ohio State played Northwestern. So hey kid, guess what? First game of the season, you get to go up against Chase Young again and have to defend him. But yeah, no, that's gonna be a great storyline leading up to that game.
It's going to be a fat L for the Chargers because it's the year of the football team, baby.
Are you going to switch your allegiances? Are you now a football team fan?
No, but listen, I just bought. I didn't tell you all the news. I just bought tickets to the football team Bucks in DC. It's going up there. It's going to be a reunion with my old coworkers who are football team fans, and I just, I mean,
you said they're going to play the Bucks that game.
I mean,
oh okay,
yeah. The game I won to. Yeah. So I have a lot of friends that are football team fans, and I just feel like it's the year of the football team. If there was ever gonna be a year,
they need to pick a mascot already.
Year, right?
That sounds so weird for
team.
To hear him say football team fans. I'm like, oh.
It's the team.
No, that's pretty on par for Washington. They are so dysfunctional. As long as Schneider's there, they ain't making any decisions. And I applaud Will's optimism for Washington because being someone who was born and groomed and molded by the NFC East, it's an absolute crapshoot. So every single year, everyone always says this is the Cowboys' year. This is the Eagles' year. This is the Giants' year. Every year, something happens where it's just so ugly, but you can't look away. It's like
so you're saying Will has cursed the football team at this point.
Oh, no, absolutely he did. Absolutely he did. And because everyone's saying that the Eagles are going to do terrible, myself included, I would not be surprised if they randomly do decent. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying they're going with the NFC East. That would be blasphemy. But what I am saying is the NFC East just says throw logic out the window. On paper, that defense looks incredible. Terry McLaurin. This is an NFC East cover. But all I'm saying is, this division's wild.
I'm just going to say it's been 16 years since the last time a team won the NFC East consecutively. Washington won it last year.
You calm down,
I'm just going to put it out
You
there.
calm down.
Oh, no. That's something we all know. It's not happening.
This is a better take than my Trey Lance to the Panthers.
That's not
Is your take that
right?
is your take just that they're going to beat the Chargers in week 1, or is your take that what is your take? Well, plant your flag.
I already did.
Yeah,
I
right.
said it's going to be they're going to go deep into the playoffs this year.
No.
Listen, you calm down, Jared Goff sound effect.
We can only take so many digs at the Lions before Anthony fights back. Good for you, Anthony. All
the
right,
Lions
let's go.
will be good soon. The Lions will be good soon. Believe it.
Ari mentioned that last time he was on.
Detroit fan has been saying.
No, they won't.
2 decades, 3 decades.
They won't.
Give
If
it
they
2
are
years.
good, Ari
Give it
mentioned
2
it
years.
when he
now
was
you
on
sound
our
like
show.
an Eagles fan.
Nope.
If you give the Lions 2 years, they won't get as many wins as the Bucks do this year.
I'm going to stop the bleeding right there, but I am going to say that Ari mentioned also the last time he was on the show, we did a mock draft special. We were talking about the Lions, and Ari said, essentially, rest assured, Lions fans, your time is coming. The arrow's pointing up. He likes what's going on there, so if the Lions do become good, it's all Ari. He predicted all of it. So let's go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks as always to my co-hosts, Tommy Yu and Will Southard. Make sure we are going to stick around for the flavor of the week. We will be doing a Vikings deep dive next week. So if you're into the Vikings, there's got to be a few of you out there that are, then make sure to stay tuned. Don't forget to check out Legit Football, legitfootball.com, or you can look for a link in the episode description. Want to thank our guests, Fernando Ramirez from Sports Illustrated, coming on and giving us the Chargers deep dive. Fernando, you want to tell us a little bit about your podcast?
Oh, yeah. So it's called Compas on the Beat. My co-host Gilbert Manzano and I, we both cover the Chargers. We're probably two of maybe a handful of Latinos that are covering the NFL. So we just decided to start a podcast. And at first we were going to do Chargers, but we're like, why not talk about other stuff? I mean, Gilbert's covered boxing before, UFC. I've covered WWE. I've covered soccer. I've covered basketball. So we decided to just talk about anything. I mean, last week I did a full Fast and Furious 9 breakdown of what I thought the movie was going to be like. So we just have a lot of fun. I mean, we talk about tacos. We talk about my co-host and I my co-host doesn't. So we're Mexican, but we don't like what? And I said, I'm Mexican, but I don't drink alcohol. And he was like, oh, wow. So he thought he was going to crap on me. And I'm like, so what's yours? He's like, well, I don't like avocados. So everybody on social media started roasting him for not liking avocados. He's like, I thought everybody was going to roast you. And I'm like, yeah, that's what happened. So it's called Compas on the Beat. We have so much fun on it. We're just talking crap. I mean, it's full of energy. I'm the energy. He's kind of the one that tries to keep me down. So it's a lot of fun. So
I know that dynamic.
I was gonna say Brian feels that on a spiritual level. I'm sure. But all I want to say is you had me at you talk about tacos. I'm already in.
Oh yeah. We talk about tacos. We talk about so I'm a huge grill guy. I'm not gonna lie. Justin Herbert got me into smoking, not smoking meats. So he started doing a victory brisket after every single game. After every single time that they won, he would make a brisket or whatever. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna buy myself a smoker. So I bought a smoker, and I've been doing that. And so we talk about all kinds of stuff on Compas on the Beat, and it's honestly a fun show. So it's we've had a lot of fun with it. We're only 17 weeks into it, but we've had a lot of fun with the podcast.
Well, Will has worn a taco on his head on this show, and we've covered Fast 9. So, Fernando, you're on the right podcast.
But I don't think I could wear it on this one because
probably
I would get
this is the one show
racist.
you can't wear the taco on your head. Fernando, thanks again for coming on. Hope that you stick around for the flavor of the week, but because you like Fast 9 and all this fun stuff, I definitely think that you'll enjoy that, so feel free to stick around. I also want to thank Ari Myrov for coming on from My Sports Update. Ari, I know that you're going to bring the podcast back at some point, but you want to throw in a plug?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, thanks for having me on again. But yeah, the Twitter account at My Sports Update, get all your NFL information there. Turn on notifications so you don't miss anything. And then the podcast, the My Sports Update Football Podcast. There's some things over there that are in the works right now. I've talked to Brian about this, but trying to figure it out. Hopefully I'll be back, and we're going to have some great guests on.
Awesome, and you know that we'll be staying tuned to whatever it is that you put out, and we can't wait to have you on the show again. You're a welcome guest at any time. So make sure to check out our revamped website, pigskinpartypodcast.com, and send us an email to say hi at pigskinpartypodcast@gmail.com. We are probably going to, in the next week or two, start to talk more details with regards to the 2 fantasy football leagues we're going to have. We're going to have a DFS league where you can win one of Will's weekly goofy hats each week in DFS, and we'll have a season-long league as well. But also feel free to submit feedback and topic suggestions, palate cleansers, main flavor of the week topic, anything like that. Don't forget to subscribe and tell your friends, and keep on leaving us those 5-star reviews on iTunes. You can find us on Twitter at officialpppod. Watch the show on YouTube. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. If you want to join our Discord community, check for the link in the episode description. Thanks as always for listening, and make sure to stick around for the flavor of the week.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Pigskin Party Podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort. We'll catch you in the next Pigskin Party.